I am so excited, I have to say, because I'm here with Amy Turner, and she is the creator of the Courage Integration Model and also the founder of the Courage Tribe. And we're kind of entering this new territory together today. I normally write blogs in a story format on my site, Entreprenista Mama, but we really wanted to just have an open conversation. Amy and I connected a few weeks ago, and she is a wonderful human being, and I just feel so incredibly blessed that we met during this time. We haven't met actually physically in person. So today we're going to just share some thoughts around the idea that the more you grow, the less you know. And the more we age, the more we become a little bit more humble in our thought process and a little bit more open to understanding others. So before we get started on this interview, I really want to let Amy introduce herself and say a little bit about her experience and what she does. So go ahead, Amy.
Hello, and thank you. So I have founded an organization about 5+ years ago called the Courage Tribe, and I'm a courage and trust coach. And I have created a variety of different programs over the years, worked with lots of different people, from individuals and artists to Fortune 100 business leaders, and everything in between. And am really excited about the move into the online platform so that I can reach more people, and as well, not just reach more people, but reach people where they're at, which right now is at home and online and out occasionally.
So true. I feel that all of us have been experiencing a learning curve, and Amy and I were talking a little bit before we started this interview about that and just how resilient we've all had to become during this time. And so I think it's a really good segue into my first question. And one thing I'd like to preface, if you're just tuning in and you haven't read any of my posts before or seen any of my recordings or spoken with me in person, I'm an entrepreneur. I own a business. I run a blog for women who are working and thriving in their careers and just trying to figure out life as mothers, as career women, as spiritual leaders, or whatever it is that really drives us. I really want to support that community and grow it. So that is a perfect segue into my first question for Amy, which was, when did you know that you wanted to start an organization focused on helping others grow?
Yeah. So when I knew that I wanted to do it, it was in about 2012. However, it was really abstract at that point. And I am divorced now. I've been divorced about 7 years, but I was still married at that time. And I had my 2 kids. My youngest was probably about a year old, and I was going along my own growth journey. There had been foreshadowing for this. Probably I could look back to like middle school. And so as my life went forward, I recognized that I wanted to start having hosting workshops and things. And the thing was, though, I was at home with my kids, and my husband at that time was not supportive of me doing this as an organization. And he was supportive in a lot of things, but not that particular thing. So something that was interesting is it never would have really happened within that marriage, and my becoming continued on through the process of divorce and a fuller self-discovery. And after that, I went through the process of really coming into my own artistic creation. Something about me is that I'm a painter as well, and went through a yoga teacher training certification. And it was through that process, not that I wanted to become a yoga teacher, but I wanted to have that growth. And it was through that process and that furthering of my own becoming that it really solidified. And so it was probably within a year after the yoga teacher training certification and that growth process that I really decided to do this, and it beat out all other career choices, and I've been going ever since.
That I don't know. There's every woman I feel close to in my life, and just even reading, I'm obsessed with memoirs. I read a lot of them. And right now I'm reading Glennon Doyle's Untamed book.
Oh yeah.
And what you're saying mirrors a lot of what she went through herself, is kind of this fighting against the person you're supposed to be. And eventually, if you can accept what you're meant to do and be in life, everything starts to fall into place. And
Yeah.
it's incredible how that can actually happen, because so many people spend their whole lives not embracing who they are.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes me think, like, how has serving as this facilitator and guide, based on this discovery you went through, really changed your life?
So in my process of becoming the facilitator and guide, earlier on, I remember having like just such this, I know exactly what I want to say. I know exactly what I want to give, right? And would do that, presented myself as a leader, and then things would happen in my own life. And I would think, oh, I can't show up, there at this particular meeting or circle because I don't feel like a leader today.
Right.
And the shame, interestingly, in not feeling like it's consistently together on an all the time basis is real for authentic leaders, as it is for anybody moving through and really looking at what's going on with themselves. And I actually have a shame practice that I like to do, even sometimes over the kitchen sink, where I'll hold my hands out and imagine whatever that feeling is when I recognize shame, imagining it just running through my fingertips and right down the drain,
Wow.
in order to acknowledge it and then allow it to move on and continue back, on my path of purpose. It's kind of
Yeah.
like taking the garbage out.
Man, there's
So
so many good nuggets right there. I just want to like have a whole series and talk about mantras and like the letting go of things and letting yourself feel while also letting go. Like, that's incredible. I've found that as an entrepreneur, and even with launching a blog, that really it's taken a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get it to the stage it's at now, where I feel like it's actually starting to grow and build momentum.
mhm.
I feel like I've learned so many things that I just would have never expected. Do you have just a couple unexpected things that have popped up for you since you started moving into owning your leadership and running the Courage Tribe and your other ventures?
Think about how long you think it's going to take, time-wise, budget-wise, energy-wise,
Mm-hmm.
more.
Yeah.
Multiply by 3 and then remain flexible.
Yeah.
So it's not as easy as it seems. And the winning in my book comes from continuing the play and not giving up. The concept of the infinite game versus the finite game. The quicker that I recognize where I actually am, the quicker that I can recover in the sense of continuing my impact.
I learned so many valuable lessons when I was waiting tables to pay my way through college.
I waited tables too.
I used to say, and I still do, that like my entire training for everything I've done happened in the restaurant industry, because you do have to learn to be flexible and nimble. You have to learn to work with people you don't really like, or you may like, but you are under immense stress. And
Totally.
so that's such good training for life, to be adaptable. And now that I have an 8-year-old daughter, I feel like that's what we're working on. She's so passionate. She's so able to communicate her needs, but she's not flexible. And that's so normal for a child. And it's like helping them learn early to adapt, I think, is pretty incredibly important for us as mothers and parents, which is interesting because you're a mom and you also are a single mom, which is a whole thing that I have no perspective on. And I'm very interested to hear more about this, but I really want to know, like, being a mom and then starting a business, what do you think has been affected in your approach by that? And what would you kind of advise working moms thinking to start a business?
The business for me is in many ways a third child, not in physical form. And as children grow, they're first fully dependent on us. They need us in the night. They need us, all the time. They're learning. They're doing all these things. I, in this instance, is learning, and even, or am learning. And even like between my 2 actual physical children, you think, oh, you've been through this once before. You get the second one, whole new ballgame, because they're a totally different person. totally different. So with business as well, it's very similar. I have felt, as perhaps a mother of three, absolute whiplash between the mothering of the physical children, who are of my blood, and the business that is of my being.
Mm-hmm.
And I have taught my children that there is a place for this, and it does feel like a third child to me. And there are things that so many people, if they knew how difficult even child rearing was, right?
Yeah.
They may not endeavor into that act of doing it, yet we do it because it's our drive and it's life belonging to itself. And so what do we do but continue how to figure out how that goes together as lovingly as possible, and as gracefully or ungracefully as possible. Right. We just do it, and there have been countless difficulties, countless late nights, but there is also, okay, let's shift. There is incredible joy and satisfaction. There is, so
yeah,
I hope I answered some aspect of your question.
Did. And I think if I would kind of pull that all together based on my experience as a working mom and just what I'm hearing you say, I feel that moms need to honor themselves, and that shows their children how to honor their own beings. Mm-hmm. And so while it's messy and there are days where your children may get a little bit less or your business may get a little bit less, if you're giving, I love that you called it a third child, because if you don't honor your business, and I've had 2 businesses, and the first one I did not honor because it was just too hard and it kind of grew out of my control. And so I've learned valuable lessons in my new endeavors. You lose yourself and therefore then cannot provide that support from an example standpoint to your children. Mm-hmm. I think that's critical, that balance. It's never found, but you need it.
Yeah. And I love that you say that, because I suppose what the underlying lesson is to recognize what codependence is, and to recognize when you're moving into that. And the thing that I have been doing, I suppose, is really moving and keeping myself within an interdependent range versus a codependent range with either my business or my children. And for them to be able to see that our relationship, as a household, is not one built in codependence nor independence.
Yeah.
The answer to codependence is not independence, it's interdependence. And so that's the thing that I would look at.
You might have just kind of answered this a little bit, but, and I personally think about this all the time, but, when as women, when we're in our early 20s, we're very, driven for maybe the wrong things. I don't think we've fully matured yet. And I feel like I can say this universally, because I just think that women in particular, especially in this culture, are taught we have to unlearn in our 30s, right? We learn things in our 20s and try to execute on them. And then if you really want to find yourself, you unlearn them. What would you say to your 20-year-old self if you could just sit down and have a glass of wine or coffee, not as a parent, but as a friend, about your career?
I would really look at attuning to the word should. Mm-hmm. I would say one of the biggest gifts that I ever had was the lesson of the should box. Recognizing the shoulds and then disentangling from the shoulds. They are pervasive and they are everywhere.
Yeah.
You shouldn't feel this way. You shouldn't dress this way. I shouldn't want this thing. I shouldn't respond this way. I'm too big. I'm too small. I'm, too anything. I should have different teeth. I should wear different earrings. I should pick a different spouse for a different reason. I should have a significant other. I should, be closed-minded about race. I should be open-minded about race. I should be closed-minded about sexuality. I should be open-minded about sexuality. I should have this career on this timeline ad infinitum. Like,
Yeah.
let's get, like, what I would tell, and what I had to do was get rid of the shoulds. The shoulds were so big on me. You know, I shouldn't be an artist. It's not practical. I should follow this. I should have children. You know, all of these things. Well, really?
Yeah. And why? Yeah.
And why? You know, and the thing is when we can get rid of the shoulds, it allows us to pull the judgment away and live from what is, live from who we are, not live out the advertisement that we think we should be, not living out the track running in our mind that we've been given since birth from our, you know, family, you know, in the dose of love or in the dose of hate that came along with us, depending on who we are and how our upbringing was. But that really attuning to should, you know, and as soon as we catch it, I call it climbing out of the should box, because it's really boxed in as well. Stop shoulding on me. You know, and moving through that. And then what does that leave? That leaves an unknowing and room for an opportunity for us to give pause to seeing us and then each other as we actually are, with curiosity and hopefully compassion.
Man, that gives me chills. It really does, because I've said for a long time now, and this is really what pushed me into wanting to be a different kind of feminist, you know, because you mentioned something that has really itched at the back of my mind for a long time, which is that there's all the shoulds that come from the traditional woman model that we're all really pretty well aware of in this generation and kind of try to combat. But then there's all the shoulds that come with the feminism and feminist model that sometimes don't quite fit the mold you're in either. And all of them are these shoulds, all of them are. And it doesn't allow you to be your unique self if you're really leaning into, I should be this kind of feminist, or I should be this kind of woman, no matter how you're playing that out. And that probably is true for men as well, in a different concept, but in a different way. But as a mother, there's all these shoulds that come along with motherhood. So in thinking about that 20-year-old self, how would you help her go into motherhood?
Let go, you know, let go of so much that you think it ought to be like, and let's just show the world what it is like for you.
Yep, because you're unique in your mothering or your parenting, and your child is unique. There is probably not, you know, you cannot replicate it. So the advice is really, it's within you what you need to do. It's easy to think that we have control, and control is such an interesting thing. None of us have it, and parenthood is the first time you realize you don't have control. You don't have control over how your pregnancy will go, how the labor will go, what type of child you'll bring into the world. It's just incredible how that's an unlearning I've had in life. And you know, you're a single working mother, so that comes with a whole set of experiences or challenges, however you want to look at them, and opportunities. But how do you feel, what have you done to co-parent successfully? And I hate that word success, but I think that there are many parents out there who are navigating divorce who would love to know how you've come into a place of love and co-parenting with your ex-partner.
Okay, so thanks for asking. This is something that has been cultivated over time. Our expression of co-parenting and the way that we do it is us putting our life choices where our ideals are. And I came from divorce deep and wide. Both of my parents have divorced and remarried. All but one of my siblings have divorced and remarried in the beginning, it was just this huge eruption. We don't know what's going on. He doesn't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. We're figuring this out. But one thing we did know is that we were not going to speak ill of the other to the children.
Yeah.
And surely they could feel and sense,
Oh,
what was going on because it was there,
mhm.
but we didn't do that. We tried to keep our arguments like aside, like, can we go over here, please? Because we need to work this out, right? And so we would do that. And then as time went on, there were these little choices, okay? There were these little choices that were big choices. And at one point, so we separated, but we didn't actually divorce. In a heart sense, we were divorced at the moment we separated, but
Right.
legally we weren't divorced for another well over a year. And I recommend that, at least for people in our situation. Everybody has other situations.
Mhm.
It gave us time to adjust to the difference in life before we made it legal.
Huh. That's a great.
And in this, I remember a really, really big conversation that I had, once things started to settle a little bit and we could speak and be in each other's presence a little bit more,
Mhm.
that I felt as though, as the mother, that I ought to have, and I had been a stay-at-home mom before this, that I ought to have the full custody legally. And I was like, but I don't want you out of their lives. I want you in their lives. I want you to be part of making these decisions. And he said, if that's really true, then why wouldn't you make it legal that way?
Mhm.
And I realized that it was total ego. It
Yeah.
was total, like, conditioned should
Mhm.
ego on the mothering. But so I was like, he goes, you just think about that. So I thought about that and I was like, that is part of that should, and it doesn't look like that for us. And so we are joint parents, and all of that. And it was all these little decisions along the way that we really had to adjust in the moment, keeping the kids first and recognizing that if we were bashing each other along that way to the children,
Right.
or in actuality, all we were doing was reducing resources for the children emotionally,
Mhm.
logistically, financially,
Mhm.
etc.
Yeah.
So,
That's incredible. I come from a divorced family, and so does my husband. And actually, so much of our marriage, and we dated for a very long time before we got married because both of us were terrified of getting divorced. Not to say that our recipe was the right one. I think everyone is very unique in what works.
sure.
But something we've talked a lot about and worked through is just the idea of, parents being friends and partners. And whether you're divorced or you're married, I see those shoulds come up, and mothers taking too much control when their spouse can potentially do things maybe not the same way they would, but
Mhm.
it gives you that support so that you can start a business or you can do the things that will really make you a better parent and a better human. And we often don't give ourselves the space for that. There's a lot of guilt, societal guilt
Mhm.
put on moms. It's
Mhm.
crazy. That's
Mhm.
wonderful. I love hearing that.
As an individual, where I had to take my own ownership was I had to actually feel the discomfort of
Mhm.
letting go of the way that I saw my should
Mhm.
as a mother,
Yeah.
and allow that. I mean, it was very scary,
Mhm.
to let go of some of that. But it's so much. I mean, I would do it again.
Yeah, it's so incredible. I love it. And your children then have this opportunity to really know both their parents and
Hmm.
really get those insights from both of you, which is
Yep.
wonderful.
Yep.
Um, which is interesting because, we are now in a completely new era and new time. The whole world has been turned upside down with coronavirus. What have you been doing to kind of maintain happiness and or just survival in your family?
Um, our family has a foundation of speaking from how we're really feeling,
Mhm.
and and moving forward in love the best that we can.
Mhm.
Sometimes that's just simply listening while one of us rants,
Right.
because we are just like, oh my gosh, this is so huge. I don't know how to
Mhm.
respond. I mean, there was a time I remember, right immediately post, and I feel like we're still immediately post, but even
Yeah.
more so immediately post the death of George Floyd. and everything going on there. Like, I remember, going through the feelings of, I'm not racist. And then like recognizing, deeping,
That's a word.
yeah, diving deeper into what some of those things are, learning this much more about experiences that so many in our population of color, of different skin tone and biological birth than me, with all the same needs from humanity and uniqueness, like learning those things, I literally grieved like 3 days. My heart was so heavy. I couldn't like keep working, and I recognized, I thought, I don't want to stay small in this grief, right?
Mhm.
And yet I felt it, acknowledged it, and then was like, okay, I'm going to do something with this. I might continue to grieve, but I need to do something with this because I want to move the life forward. My kids have been seeing this and they're feeling this all as well. And what we do is we talk about it. I also teach that among all of the atrocities, joy is a human right. It
Yeah.
is our right, and I model that to them by putting myself at times in a place of celebration. We have had dance parties. We have gotten out all the scarves, and we're like having like these ribbon dance parties with our scarves all over the place at
Yeah.
night. We have baked. We have gotten out in the woods.
Mm.
Um, we have done all of these different things, still told stories. Something that I love to do is, in our family, when things get tense and tight, we will literally pull out pieces of copy paper. I just did a video actually on a social post on this recently, and punch them because it is funny, and I don't know,
It's
but we
cathartic.
will do things to just go, hey, and we don't rush each other through the feeling that we're having.
Yes, that's been a big learning for me as a parent during this time. All of our children are experiencing this, and there's nothing we can do to change that
Mm-mm.
or hide it or stop it. And
Mhm.
at the same time, it's like we ripped off this band-aid that was covering an anthill, and now everything is coming out under the
Mhm.
surface because of this angst that our entire world is feeling. And I think that, as women and as mothers, we maybe more innately get certain struggles than other human beings might. But at the same time, if you are, if your skin tone is as such that you have experienced privilege or you have not experienced fear from a very young age, that racial divide and that unlearning we must go through right now is pretty intense,
Mhm.
what we thought we knew. And that kind of goes back to the
Yep.
concept of this whole conversation we're having, which is kind of becoming more knowledgeable and more humble in our growth and learning as a culture so that we can give our children the tools, all
Mhm.
children, but particularly the individuals who are coming into, what are they calling them, COVID kids, like that are going to have to deal with a new world. And
Mhm.
that touches on race, that touches on socioeconomic barriers, that touches on feminism, it touches on, our roles in gender and our sexual orientation. So, what do you think is going to change for you moving forward, whether personally or in business? I think they kind of all mash up when it comes to
Mhm.
this concept. What
Mhm.
what have you learned recently?
So many things I learned that I actually, during this more intense period, probably 3 weeks ago or something, where I was just processing all of this. And I have this poem that I wrote, and I'm not going to read the whole poem here, but it expresses so much. And one of the things is, it's about resilience. And one
Mhm.
of the lines says, "I move with it.
Mm.
I am seeing, asking, digging, building."
Yeah.
It's so complex. It's not black and white. It's not this or that. It's so many shades in between, and it's so like inner mechanized as far as how we can see this, what our experiences are, and how we can move forward. So as a white woman business leader, I was like, okay, I'm supposed to listen, but I'm also supposed to speak. that I don't know how to do that all at once. Do I silence myself and listen? And it's in turn. It's in turn. It's having a conversation. It's not a monologue from me or a monologue from whoever the they or the them are. It's both. And so listening and then speaking compassionately, building bridges. There was a moment that I felt like anything I say as a white person right now is going to be twisted into some other thing. And that's okay for me to have those feelings. It's better for me to have those feelings. I think that people of color and people who are, have been societally put into a downward position have been feeling this forever. So for me to be like, to experience some discomfort in this, well, okay, my job is to own it and have curiosity around my own feelings. And also to then not put myself in a one down suddenly. Like the answer to codependence is not independence, it's interdependence. The answer to having been in a one-up position, which let's call privilege, is not to become in a one-down position. It is to become in withness. And that takes two. That takes a knowing of the self, and it takes an interaction with the other. Be as loving as possible for bridge building and not for accusation and judgment making.
Yeah, that's a great, I really like what you said there. And it takes a lot of courage to say anything right now, because I do feel like as women leaders and just leaders in general right now, if we do not fall into the category of needing this racial justice that our country really needs for all of the missteps we've taken, you feel paralyzed with fear to say anything. And I understand what I do understand at this juncture is we are not responsible for fixing, because that isn't expected, but we are responsible for understanding and continuing to learn how to communicate better. It's like if your husband or your child is incredibly angry at you, your job in that moment is to hear why they're angry, let them process it, and then build the bridge after. It's not trying to engage and say, you should do this or you should have done this differently in the moment. And right now we've got an incredible feeling of anger that needs to just come out and process, I think, and then we might be able to move forward with a better understanding of what we need as a culture and as a world. That would be my hope. So that we were going to go ahead. You were going to say something.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's not instantaneous.
No.
The expectation in a fast food era, is that we just get things right away. It's black and white. We order this. I want the number 2, supersize it, etc. Yeah. And it's not that. It's so not that. And the fact that it takes time and it takes us to keep coming back, is the thing. But it also takes us not only keep coming back, it takes us pausing.
Yep. Yeah. Well, so we're going to run out of time, and there's some questions I'm not going to ask because I really want to get to the meat of the end of our conversation here, which is I'd really like for anyone listening to this or watching this to know what you're working on right now and how they might be able to get involved. If you are a leader, you want to be a leader, you want to live your life courageously, I really think that Amy has something for you. So I'll let you take it from here.
Okay. So what I am working on right now is so incredibly and ultimately exciting. It is an 8-week e-course experience that can be participated from digitally. So it's appropriate for our current era. And it is called Courage, Power, and Peace. And it delves into week by week what I am calling processes of courage from a model that I've been teaching for the last few years called the Courage Integration Model. And, if we look at this, it's about integrating, bringing things in, and then seeing where we're at and how we relate to them in a way that moves us forward with resilience. And resilience is really a base theme for this particular course through resilience in times of growth, challenge, and change. And to speak to resilience, you look in the dictionary and resilience will talk about coming back to.
Interesting.
And, if you think about, a resilient fabric, let's say Lycra, and you snap it, right? You pull it out and then it snaps back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm talking about moving forward with resilience, but resilience is about snapping back, what the back is back to an integrated health, back to a position of being able to grow. And the forward is we have to actually move forward to have this resilience, to have this way to be able to come back. And it is no secret what the processes of the courage integration model are, the processes of courage that I teach. It is about compassion. It's about ownership. This is all for self and other. It's about an interdependent unity. It's respect with an ability to respond. So there's mutuality as well as ownership there. It's about awareness and activation. It's about grace and grit. And it's about energy, movement, and renewal.
Yeah.
Yes, we need to rest, yet we must not remain stagnant. We need ourselves, but we're social beings. We rise together. So this is about lifting and being lifted. It is not about lifting and then putting down, So
yeah, this is a time where we really need this concept. I think any human being you talk to right now really wants to move forward, even though physically we may not be able to. We may physically have to social distance again in a very intense way soon here. We may have lots of coming back because of how we've proceeded as a country and a culture to a model that isn't physically going to feel very good. But if there is this focus on resilience and we can help our children with that, and we can work toward that as leaders and maybe help our employees and our organizations thrive through this period of time, we will come out so much stronger. So I am so supportive of these courses and these workshops. I think anyone who is leading a business, an organization, or themselves at this moment could really benefit. So we will put the link in the bio for this, and we would really just encourage you to consider signing up.
Yeah, it's amazing. And there are scholarship opportunities, partial scholarship opportunities. So it's something that I really want to make accessible to so many people.
Yeah. Well, and I'm so honored because I'm going to have an opportunity to speak on the concept of ownership. And that's something that, the way Amy puts it is it's I can. And I really resonate with that because I've always been a fighter and a survivor in my life, but I've had to learn to own my own being because so many shoulds were my guiding force for so many years. And then finally I reached a breaking point where I really had to change my behavior to find myself and own it. So I'm thrilled to speak about that, but please check it out. And I just want to end with one thing. In 30 seconds or less, tell me what you want to change in the world for your children. Whatever comes to mind.
Yes. Well, the thing that really comes to mind is to be active in your own rescue.
Ooh, love that.
To understand that is bound with each other, and entitlement will not take us anywhere. And all the things. What I want to change is to create a world around us where we can talk about the things we talked about in this interview and more. Where we can, what I want my children to learn, honestly, are the things I'm teaching in this course, the things I teach through my work, and the grace and grit, the perseverance, the leading with compassion, lead with compassion and continue from there, and that the pause is part of the go.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been such a wonderful journey just to go through this conversation with you.
Yes.
And we're opening the door on our own friendship, and I just hope this interview opens the door for other individuals to seek out their tribe, and hopefully we can be part of it. So thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
Talk soon. Thanks, everyone.